tonight, yeah, get ready to get started. Jump right into it. Just gonna pull up this game. Yeah, no, I'm just sort of working on this new webcam, so I'm still trying to figure out some of the specifics to it, and it didn't seem to sync with my Twitch, but now we've got it. So here we go. Import into here. E4, D5, pawn takes, queen takes. This game was sent by a Gadmeter, I'm just yeah. So basically, this is a Scandinavian with queen d6. This is a line that I played at one point in tournament games. I know it pretty well. Basically, you offer white some early game advantage. With accurate play, you neutralize this. An early c6 was how I played it. So like here, potentially c6, or even maybe before knight east to f6, c6. But overall, there's a bunch of options here, black's queen looks attackable, but generally development attempts by white in order to try to attack the black queen will be unsuccessful, and usually leads to the queen being able to flexibly move to a more productive outpost. Knight takes, knight c4. Knight f4 is a pretty ambitious outpost for this knight. The bishop can trade for it. That's probably good for black. But a move like c5, I think, puts pressure on the queen. I'm not sure knight f4 is a supported enough outpost. I'm just looking at c5, queen f6. It's an ambitious play for sure, but I think that black can't quite do it. Here, I think, yeah, I guess white's sort of headed towards mate. Exactly, this got out of hand. Queen 6 in not necessarily an opening move that I consider to be refuted or to be, I think this bishop e6 move is probably exactly the correct diagonal for the bishop, but maybe g6, bishop g7. But overall, this idea with going to cause some problems for is basically going to cause some problems. So here, even with this 6, it's not more than a pawn difference. What you can sort of expect this game, it's not and offers you eval the entire time. But you'll see it as the position slowly continues. The eval that +1, not that few moves from now. Relatively intuitive moves will lead that much towards the equal direction. Anyways, castles, bishop e5, bishop d5, knight 6, and now basically that was not a favor for black. The e1 to 2. So I think black can then to be queenside castles. G6 and bishop g7 look tempting, but overall I think this is going to be this should probably be avoided. I'm thinking g6, bishop g7 as an idea. G6, and now that is towards quality. It's interesting. Some surprised as it does. So here, good plans for developing moves. Bishop e3, black will play like bishop e6 or something, but there's no real challenges for black. Black's development is healthy even with the queen having been played to d6. An issue with Scandinavian and queen d6 is can be that the bishop will play to g7. We've bishop d6. Queen d6 being a blocking move for the bishop on the dark square diagonal. Anyways, nothing particularly f3, d6, castle, and d5, d5. Already this is really a positional disadvantage. This diagonal, it'll take for white to be able to exploit it. Queen 8 probably need to knock this queen off of f4 before that happens, but In any case, this this basically the position for white. I'm almost tempted to say that black should like play e6 here and just allow the castling with pawns on d5 and this on d5. It's dangerous. So I don't think done with basically white already pawn storming the queen side. Maybe g6 and bishop g7 and then castles kingside is probably the best plan. But this is already like extremely dangerous. Let's go back again, because I know this is a playable opening for black. I think here, I prefer the c6 line. C6 here, you're still within relatively well-established opening theory. This knight e5 looks like a playable move for white. Bishop to e3, bishop to g5. They're all good. But at the end of the day, this this basically c6 advance turns into a win for white. The c6 advance adds to a quality to the position. Sorry, I'm sort of fried from my class, but yeah. So c6 here allows allows black some chances. The eval is more favorable to white than it actually is, and black will try to develop quickly. And as healthily as possible with the dark squared bishop somewhat restricted. C6, white can play like a3, g6 to get that bishop out on that diagonal, and then castles kingside. I think this is a much better formation out of Scandinavian queen d6. This other one it allows too much pressure to be exerted on black. Quick movement is dangerous. Yeah, so is this white's game or is this black's game? I'm not 100% sure on this one. But yeah, so this bishop d3 seems to be a a developing move. I don't know, to be honest. This is this is an old Scandinavian line. This has been popular for 5 to 10 years, and knight takes d5, c4, knight f4, but yeah, overall, I thought this was that black was the one who sent this in, but I could be mistaken. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. The analysis should be the same. So yeah, knight e5, queen takes e5, rook e1, and black's basically in a lot of trouble. This doesn't look like something that can be supported from black. So with g6, there's danger. Let's look. I guess I don't know. Even here, white is okay basically until he forces this d5 pressure. Yeah. Interesting. I'm gonna look. I didn't realize that I sent. Is it possible that he sent me a game? Because I had thought that black was the one who sent me this game, but I guess I could be wrong. I'll check again, but I thought that black sent this game, so let's see if we can figure it out. Anyways, cool. This opening basically is is playable. So let's make it a play. And I would say that by move 9 here, this opening is not playable. So let's try to come up with a better solution for black. I like the c6 line, but I bet we can even make the a6 line work. I bet this, there's many games out of this theory. Let's see sort of where it gets sidestepped. Knight c6 is kind of a deviation from mainline theory here. I think either bishop to g4 probably is the best. I think bishop g4 is probably the best. Basically, bishop g4 puts pressure on this f3 knight, and knight c6 sort of creates developmental problems. Knight c6 makes this c7 pawn weaker and more likely to be attacked. White's probably not going to have the resources required to make the c7 pawn attacked, but overall, I think knight c6 is not all around as good a move as like bishop to g4 after g3. Yeah, so I guess I would say bishop to g4 here. This looks like a pretty clean, straightforward way to develop. Knight c7 knight c6 weaken c7. G6, bishop g7, black is probably fine. So yeah, here still black is fine. The eval really shifts, and there's actually still even a game here. I don't know if one should castle queenside here. We saw in this game that things got pretty dangerous having castled queenside. Hey, good evening, Jack. Thank you for joining the stream. But yeah, so anyways, this bishop to d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5. This ends up being pretty bad for black. c4 and then knight f4. But even on knight f6, I think white's still got a pretty solid plus. Castling queenside doesn't, is unplayable with the pawns on d4 and c4. It's too, these pawns are too advanced and black is getting attacked too aggressively. I think as soon as c4 gets played, castling queenside becomes, not a reasonable possibility. Knight takes, knight f4, and but I don't think there's too much out of this game. I guess in terms of thinking about this game, what I'm gonna try to look for is a more solid way for black to play, the Scandinavian. c6 is cool. c6 and a6 probably isn't playable. I might go just c6 instead. But here, black basically has a solid position. There's no need really to force anything here. Black can just sort of develop as normal, castle kingside, and have a solid game with the queen developed on d6. If the queen ends up getting attacked, you move it, but there's many there's many opportunities. The Scandinavian is an interesting opening. Obviously it goes against the fundamental principle of don't bring your queen out too quick. But it generally is a good surprise attack. Basically, you'll run into an opponent who has some type of Ruy Lopez or Italian game that they're very familiar with, and d5 will take them out of that. It's not just that either. Usually black can develop in a pretty healthy way. It's the issue is black basically at the end of it. Black, has a somewhat less healthy development of the dark squared bishop. Everything else is basically fine. It's an interesting opening. Basically, there's also an opportunity for if the queen on d6 in the queen d6 Scandinavian gets attacked, there's a lot of opportunities that involve moves like queen to b4, and then attacking b2. And just general misplacement that happens to white if he tries to chase the queen around from d6. White gets healthy development of his knight on c3 after d5, so e4, d5, pawn takes, queen takes, knight c3. The knight is placed on a natural square, but if there's any more chasing of the queen from the d6 square, that tends to involve moves like knight to e4 or bishop to f4, and those aren't as healthy in terms of developing squares for white. But anyways, it's interesting, and it's definitely an opportunity for black to try to surprise white, and it's I guess I would say it basically tends to be relatively equal in black's best case scenario. But it's it provides the practical compensation of taking a very prepared white player out of the opening book. I play Italian game, and I play Italian game generally. I'm trying to try out a few other openings, but yeah, I think Italian game is just solid, clean, easy to play, and you know, it leads to basically an open position with attacking opportunities. That's why I play that, you know, with the white pieces. So I no, I don't. I play e5 as black. I play the Sicilian occasionally. I'm trying to broaden the set of openings that I know. But I generally play e5 as black. Um, yeah. Anyways, this was when I was playing the Scandinavian with d6, that was an interesting kind of experiment with the openings. But here, I think basically this queenside castling is not an idea that's executable with the pawns this advanced. It's got to be like g6, bishop g7, castles kingside. White's still showing a big edge, or sorry, but like queen a4, c6, bishop e4. I mean, this actually does look super dangerous. Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a good idea. We can give that a shot, Jack. That sounds interesting to me. But yeah, this basically is unplayable. Castling queenside, basically doesn't serve the primary purpose of increasing king safety. It's if the king safety is not increased after having castled, there's really not much of a reason to do it here. The engine is opting for like e5 or those kinds of moves. E6 I think is pretty good. But even then, sort of sketchy because I don't know if this bishop's ever going to get out on this diagonal and allow black to castle kingside. But yeah, Scandinavian's interesting. I'll show you sort of the line that I used to play. I used to play c6, and then knight e4 is not playable, but like, bishop to c4, bishop to g4, bishop to e3, knight to d7. And this is actually a pretty solid position for black. This is actually not as easy to attack as it might look with the queen on d6. b5 is taken, e4 is taken, g3 and bishop f4 is kind of a slow way to make kind of an effective attack. On g3, e6, bishop f4, queen b4, and basically or basically black has the queen in a position that's pretty healthy. Bishop to b3, maybe queen a5, bishop to b4, but overall this is sort of tricky. Black's position here is actually a good amount better. I think it tends to go from positive to negative around like g3. G3 is pretty much a wasted tempo. The computer confirms that g3 bishop f4 is like not an effective idea. But it's an interesting opening. But this is how I would argue you should play it. Queen d6, c6, bishop g4, knight d7, e6. And this is a playable Scandinavian for black. It's interesting, and it takes white out of his prepared theory generally. All right, let's take a look at the next one. This is another one from Lee Chess, so I'm just going to import it. That was sort of weird. Let's see. 1 second. This is interesting. So this is a prepared game. Yeah, basically this is a prepared game which has a sort of different export strategy from Lee Chess. So sorry, this is taking me a second. Oh, this is really weird. Sorry, guys. I don't know why it's done like this, but there's an unusual setup on lead chess. Oh, it's a study, they're calling it. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. This is really tedious. It's funny. I'm always impressed by the ability to make these things more complicated than they need to be. I feel like time goes into that, you know, sometimes. Anyways, finally got the PGN. Here's our game. This is a game between Simeonato and Bianchi. It was a study or something in Lee chess, and this was sent to me by White. So let's take a look. It's Sicilian Alpin, early d5. d5 is an interesting way to play against this. You know, basically one of the main pieces of the Sicilian is if black can secure an early d5, black tends to be in pretty good shape. So on c5, pawn takes d5, queen takes d5, and overall, you know, white is basically, you know, white is better and still has the initiative. But black has probably secured, you know, a better center for himself. e7 to e5 is playable, but overall this looks pretty good for white, even with a neutralized center. But it's probably the best opportunity. So e4, c5, c3, Sicilian Alpin. Let's see in terms of popularity, d5 and knight f6 are about the same. But d5 challenges the center more effectively. Pawn takes d5, queen takes d5, d4, knight f6, knight f3, bishop g4, and basically this is white having center control. But you know, there are some basically inequalities here. Maybe pawn takes c5, maybe bishop e2. But you know, even with the center, you know, White has the edge. He has a kind of more healthy development structure, and open diagonals for his bishops as well. So I don't know. It looks about equal, but the computer evals is slightly better for white. Bishop e2 is the main opening line. e6, h3, bishop h5, castles, yeah, you know, these guys are basically playing theory. It's kind of impressive that a 900 knows this theory this far in, but yeah, good, you know, good on them. Good evening, Aphelion. Thank you very much for joining the stream. But yeah, this is an interesting game. d5 is a challenging move against the Sicilian Alpin. You know, the normal d4, you know, is potentially delayed. Knight a3 is getting proposed by the engine as the most popular line, but d5 is an aggressive response to the Sicilian Alpin, which is slow to set up d4. Basically, a slower way for white to play d4. By this point, it's about equal. I haven't seen this game before, so I'll just play it to the end. But this is yeah, this is pretty interesting. You know, it's basically, this trades into a very equal-looking endgame. Yeah, no, it's a 900 versus a 1622, and ultimately a win. You know, basically a win for black out of a very strong. You know, basically a very equal game trades into a win for black. But that's apparently the ratings that were given for this. You know, for this game. So, anyways. regardless of these guys' ratings, I think we can take a look at the d5 response to the Sicilian Alapin here. So let's take it for granted basically that that white is better. So on queen d6, d4, knight f6, knight f3. And here, I think both sides sort of have some chances as white. The main lines are e6 for black. Basically making an attempt for a quicker development of the c5 bit pawn e5 display, or bishop to g4. I like bishop to g4 better. Both eval is positive for white. Bishop e2 is a natural way to develop and deal with this threat. e6, h3, bishop h5, castles, knight c6. And here, basically it's interesting. I feel like black has better center control, but I'm gonna guess that white still has a favorable eval. On bishop e3, pawn. So just a potential line: bishop e3, pawn takes, pawn takes. Like bishop e7 or bishop b4, bishop e7, say, and knight c3. And now the queen, is forced to move, and white has recaptured the center. Basically, this looks like a position in which black is dominant in the center. White can quickly develop and knock the piece, knock the black pieces backwards, so that he regains, the initiative in the center. Very straightforward lines lead to white being better in the center again. This is one of them. They both have longer diagonals than the bishops for black. And once this center's neutralized, white's facing off with better center control. This d4 versus e6 combination leads to a spatial advantage for the person who's got the pawn on the 4th rank. And overall, basically no real problems for white. He might have to watch this d4 pawn a little bit, but not really that much because these minor pieces defend it pretty well. Rook d1 would potentially defend it pretty well. And black doesn't really have too much to move forward with. It's hard to kind of come up with an intuitive plan for black here, like bishop to b4, queen to b3 maybe, or maybe like knight to b4, queen to b3. Probably bishop to b4 is queen b3 is the best response, or rook c8. Rook c8 is probably the best response. Rook c8 secures the long diagonal for the rook. There's no other move that I see for black that's really that productive. So here, basically knight a5, queen c2, knight d5, and this looks, pretty solid for white. This long diagonal for the bishop. The knight can't post on e5, but it might be able to, maneuver into an attacking position. I like white's position here. It's probably a little bit close to equal, but some good chances. Maybe queen to a4, bishop to b5 with threats on the a pawn. These positions are kind of this Sicilian Alapin positions thematically are a little bit tricky because white doesn't have his standard attack on the king side quickly type of pre-built strategy. Anyways, this trades off into equality, and now we have a knight and pawn endgame. Very symmetrical looking. My guess is that the sides are supposed to develop their kings to good squares, make their kings more active, and I think white ends up this game with making kind of an unfounded knight sacrifice. He basically hangs the knight. Yeah. So he plays knight d5, king, and then king c5 hangs the knight on d5. Knight checks, king up, b6, and then king c4 is forced, but instead white plays king to c6, knight to d4, and there's no way to continue to have defense on the knight on d5. Kind of a bummer. It was a really solidly played game. I don't have much to It's an impressively played game, basically, between two class players that I'm not familiar with. But yeah, so from here, I assume we're pretty. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see where we deviate from opening theory here too. D4, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2, e6, h3, castles, bishop e7. And rook d1 deviates. Bishop e3 defending this d4 pawn is the book move. Let's play book a little bit further. C takes d4, c takes d4, knight c6, knight c3, queen d6, and I think white's basically like pretty healthy, safe development for white. So I don't know. Maybe queen b3, maybe knight b5. But overall, I think it's pretty much, I think it's in pretty good. White is holding solid here. It'll be a complicated game. I don't know the plans. Isolated queen pawn in a Sicilian Alpin position. Maybe you're supposed to attack on the king side, but I don't really know this super well. It looks like queen b3 and attacking on the queen side might be better, which is unusual for a Sicilian situation. But anyways, in terms of things to take away from this game, I think both sides played really well. There's not really a lot of errors or room for improvement here. I guess maybe knight e2 is inefficient. Like maybe bishop f1 is what the engine is recommending, or knight e5 maybe. Knight e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, and then queen can take, and then f4. But overall, there's just very few opportunities, much fewer than you normally see from a game between a 900 and a 1600. But in any case, this is demonstrative of some good play here. Knight e3, okay, white trades, and yeah, it ends up trading into an equal endgame. It's kind of a disappointment of the very end because white hung the piece after playing a very accurate game, but these things happen. Middle game improvements, I don't know. I'm not seeing much, to be honest. Bishop e3, pawn takes d4, 6, knight c3, queen d8. And looks pretty close to equals, pretty accurate. Rook c1, rook c8, queen b3. And just a very solidly played response to the Sicilian Alpin. Okay. I guess white's a little better here, maybe. I don't know. It looks extremely accurate. Knight to c6, bishop to e3, c takes d4, c takes d4, bishop e7, knight c3. And this is sort of what I was talking about the shift from a black controlled center to a white controlled center. But overall, not a lot of correction to be made. Anyways, it's an interesting game and a well played one. Maybe is there any discovered tactic or anything interesting here? Like knight to f5 looks kind of cool. I guess I'd play knight to f5. That looks like a little better than what was played. Knight to f5 and then rook takes e7, securing the rook on the 7th. Maybe that's an improvement. But overall, solidly played. So for white, I guess you had this tactical opportunity, this knight to f5 with a discovered threat on the knight. Right here. This I think is about as one-sided as it ever got. Queen takes e6, knight to f5 here or on the next move, but I guess even here is probably even better. Queen takes, rook takes, and the rook's comfortable on the 7th. Very few other opportunities were given to white, so I think that's probably about as good as you can do. Anyways, thank you very much for sending that game, and interesting situation, interesting game, and thank you very much for that. Here, I think we might have another Fen game. It's amazing. I think I'm impressed by all these different ways that people can send me these games, but I think I'm getting a little better at it. I'm getting to learn how to do it, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Let's look at chess.com's Fen parser. Here we go. So does it start here? I can't. Okay. No, maybe not that. I'm kind of impressed. I would like to get this going because people seem to be sending me in a Fen Fen notation games. But let's see. If we can't get it working, we'll just go to the next one. But I want to get this working because I think it's possible. Yeah, if we can't get it working, then I don't know if there's that much that can be done. Let's look. Maybe I'll be able to pull this. I think Dennis sent these, maybe, right? Yeah, so let's look at this. Dennis sent a few of these. I'm just going to take the notation directly. He's got a few miniatures out of this, basically early knight takes f7. Italian game with two knights. Knight takes e4, knight takes f7, queen h4, castles, bishop c5, d4. And overall, white doesn't come up with a good attack here. Basically, black's attack becomes overwhelming too quickly. Let's look at another. These games are all pretty kind of crazy and I think really short. Here's another. Two knights games. These are two knights games where black gets super aggressive attacks. Yeah, pretty, yeah, busting tactically. And let's look at the third. My guess is that they're all probably going to be, I think that they all sort of point to the idea that two knights games probably shouldn't be played as white, especially without good theoretical support. But they're definitely interesting to look. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4, knight F6, knight G4. Now, how does this go wrong? So, knight takes E4, bishop takes F7. Already looks like an improvement. King E7 blocks the queen, so this basically ends up being favorable to white. The development of the queen is really necessary here. So showing that bishop takes f7 is favorable relative to knight takes f7, I guess is an important takeaway here. D3 looks pretty dangerous. On knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, and wins the queen. But yeah, so I guess the point of this is there's no improvement on or there's not really much of an improvement on after bishop takes f7. I mean, or that I guess bishop takes f7 and king e7 and white is just fine is the point. Looking at eval, at least, like bishop takes f7 is preferred here. Bishop f7 looks like a +2. Black looks like minus 0.4 after knight takes. Given the difference between these two eval values, I'd probably just play bishop takes f7 and let the queen get stuck with let the queen get stuck after king e7. But I guess it's up to it's up to your personal taste, and if you feel like you can support knight takes f7, then then do that. But these are the types of eval differences that are pretty hard to ignore as the person reviewing the game. Let's take a look at the next one. But I'm guessing that just the danger can get sidestepped by white by just playing bishop takes f7 here. And it's sort of like, why wouldn't he? It's that 3-point differential between the first and second choice is probably too much to keep from. It's basically too much to counter. It's hard to come up with a reason why you shouldn't play a move that's differentiated by the second best move by 3 points. Knight takes, and then knight takes here. I'm not sold on knight takes f7 or knight to f7 here. I think it just should be bishop takes f7 and run this into run this basically into a win. King e7, d3, and then I just don't think I think black doesn't have a great response. Knight f6 maybe, but like this position's really messed up for black. So basically knight f7. White's better. Yeah. So I'm gonna make that piece of advice. 2 knights, knight takes e4, bishop takes f7 is the move. Knight takes e4 not playable. Knight takes f7 probably playable, but not that good an idea. Bishop takes f7 is the way to do this. Bishop takes f7, king e7. But yeah, anyways, this looks pretty good for white. I think that's pretty much. I think that's how to refute this. It's not knight takes e4 is not the refutation of 2 knights taking e4 against this knight attack, but bishop takes f7 looks like it makes this knight g4 pay off with king e7, d3. And then if takes, then bishop takes, and if not takes, then like bishop b3, and white's got pretty smooth sailing a stronger position out of the opening. But yeah, anyways, that's that's an interesting demonstration. But I think bishop takes f7 is the way to do it. Anyways, let's take a look at the next one. This one is a Mets game. Thank you very much for sending this in, Amet. And let's look. We'll take it from your perspective too. 4 knights, bishop b5, d6, castles, bishop d7, and h3. So in this position, this is a well-established opening position. Rui Lopez response. I guess bishop e7 is probably. I think bishop e7 is a better way to go with the bishop than g6. I don't know what the computer would say, but I think just increasing development here for black is good. Having the bishop e7, the bishop e7, bishop d7 setup is a little bit constricted for black. All things equal, basically, black would be developing his bishops to better squares. I don't know if that means he's supposed to play bishop g4 here. Probably not. But bishop d7, bishop e7, and there's going to need to be some sort of kind of corrective action in order for black to advance. This is very aggressive. This gives an early signal that black's going to attack aggressively on the king side. In order to win, black will probably have to do it relatively soundly. But this looks like a pretty good. This actually looks like it went into a pretty good, solid consolidation here. 2 rooks versus or 2 bishops versus 2 knights is a pretty good outcome. I don't know if I'm sold on this attack. Knight h5 is kind of a rough place for this knight. I feel like if white plays knight h4 here, doesn't he? I think he knocks the queen off of the defense of the knight. So that's that's just something to consider. So queen, I guess he needs to deal with this this knight as well. So maybe queen f6 is not, or that's not the time to play that. Queen takes f6, d takes c3, bishop to g5. Okay. I don't know. I feel like this should be better for white here. Queen f6 and then knight d5, queen takes h4, knight takes c7 is the winning line for white. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Knight h5, queen f6, b4. Yeah. But there's too many tactical responses here. I think this is an overly ambitious attack. I think, generally successful kingside attacks will involve like h6, g5, g4, and eventually, black will get a winning position against a relatively, basically black will get a winning position using his pawns. If you do it entirely with pieces, as is attempted in this game, you pretty much have to use the queen, and then the queen is sort of misplaced on g6. Knight to h5 is a potential response that will knock the queen off of the defense of the knight here. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this ends up playing out great. So the end result, awesome, good tactical execution. Not much to say there. But in terms of improving this attack in general, I think going with a somewhat slower h6, g5, g4 is probably like a slightly better way to do this. If you get the pawn to g4, it's forced to trade for this h3 pawn. H3 pawn, if the h3 pawn doesn't want to trade on g4, then black can like play a move like pawn takes h3 and try to break into the king side that way. But in terms of coming up with an effective attack on the king side, do involve the pawns like at least a little bit. I understand like the want to not disrupt your king side and play like it basically if you play moves that allow for the king side to be opened, that probably means you can't castle on the king side. But that's fine. I mean, if you're black in this situation, you're hoping that the game doesn't even last that long. You're hoping like h6, g5, g4, and the white king side gets totally ripped apart, and you're able to like checkmate or like win a piece or something. And the game will be over by move 30. So anyways, I like the attack. I think it's definitely true that black can establish some really good attacks on white king side using these types of formations, using like threats like bishop takes h3, queen to g6, knight to h5, and knight to f4. But here I think it's just a little too early, and I think you need pawns to support it. It's hard to make an attack with just pieces, because if you need to sacrifice something, or you need to trade, basically if you attack with only pieces, that means you can never trade anything, right? Because you're only able to take other pieces with your pieces in order to get in order to not establish like a losing material trade. So pawns, I think, are necessary to effectively launch an attack here. What ultimately happened was great. It was a good it was a good attack and a good successful breaking through of the king side with your pieces, but I don't think that kind of thing can be done consistently, and I think that in that attack with the pieces, there were a few tactical moments where white may have been able to secure an advantage. So I'd say queen f6. I don't know if you're supposed to move the knight off of f6 first to like knight h5. Maybe. But even knight h5 allows for bishop takes, and then knight takes e5, and then this threat on e5 here, and that just wins a pawn. So I think knight h5 probably just isn't the way to do it. I'm thinking h6, g5, and then maybe leave the knight on f6, but plan to play g4. Maybe play the knight to h7. Either leave it there or play it to h7. But get the rook to g8 and attack with the pawns on the g file. It's a good attack. Those types of attacks tend to work. They tend to be pretty dangerous for white. You will see them work at a pretty high level. But it needs to be done with the pawns and not the pieces, because you basically can't lose any of the pieces. But a pawn you can sacrifice or trade or whatever for another pawn. So that's the way to advance this attack. Bishop d7, h3, knight h5, h3. Yeah, it's just it's basically a reasonably well played 4 knights game, and then the attack worked great. But I don't think that's your best strategy for attacking white on the king side. I think it needs to be a pawn a pawn storm, probably one that's supported by the rook on g8. I'll try to pull a game of mine where I get a similar attack. I've played games where I've won with h6, g5, and pawn storming the king side in like the Ruy Lopez or Italian game or 4 knights or whatever. It's a very playable attack. Gives black a good plan, but this one's just too early, and the pawns need to be involved to make it a sound attack. But overall, thank you very much for sending the game, Amet, and I really hope that is somewhat helpful. Those attacks are a good idea, but involve the pawns. They're the most expendable pieces, and you often need to expend pieces to form an effective attack. So that's my thinking there. But interesting game, good tactical execution, and congrats on winning that one. Let's take a look. Banana Reno is playing black in this game, and I'm definitely interested in seeing it. So let's take it from his perspective. He plays the Sicilian. White plays an early bishop c4. So bishop c4, we've talked about a few times on this stream. Bishop c4 is not like a super good move in the Sicilian. There are a few Sicilians where it's playable. It tends to be more playable in like the closed Sicilian Grand Prix attack. But bishop c4 is sort of a problematic move in the Sicilian because it runs into e6 and then d5 with an active threat. And normally that's, enough to knock it off of that square. So it's probably just a square that, unless you have a good reason or the theory super well, you know exactly when to do it. I'd recommend developing the bishop probably to e2 or b5. Bishop c4 basically, it's great. It's very tempting to threaten black on f7 in the Sicilian, but e6 and d5 make moving the bishop to c4 a kind of a difficult proposition. So e6, sort of stunts you on that diagonal. But yeah, so e6 I think is the way to go. Knight c3, knight c6, a3, knight f6, d3, d5, pawn takes, and here I think you're better. Basically white has not really developed his bishop very in a very good way. This could get really stuck. This is somewhere between stuck and extremely stuck. And I think moves like bishop e6, bishop d6, queen c7, castles kingside, very straightforward. Developing moves will work for black here. Black also controls the center. White's traded his e pawn for you basically traded e pawns with white, and you have a spatial advantage with your more advanced pawn structure. You're in good shape. Bishop e7. h3, bishop f5, knight f3, castles, rook e8, d4, c4, and among other things, this bishop's now extremely stuck. and like what's he gonna do? Like play b3? Like it's a pretty bad position for white, unfortunately. But yeah, you've capitalized on this restriction of this bishop. That bishop's gonna be pretty much out of the game, I think. It will be very costly in terms of time and effort for white to untangle. So yeah, so if you're black in this situation, I would say just keep developing, play in a straightforward way. Maybe mount an attack on the king side, as a potential idea. But overall, this is better for you. All right, so that was white's freeing move ultimately. This bishop to b1. That was yeah, that took a long time, and black was able to make some advancements while that was going on. Here the queen side's all blocked off, so it's time to attack on the king side. Maybe knight takes d2. Not sure. The engine is suggesting bishop to h2, which yeah, that's probably best. Bishop to h2, king h1, knight g3, and you win the queen. Because king takes h2, knight to e2, king to e1, and then knight takes c1. Was there any other way out of that? Like, I think bishop h2. Yeah, no, and I think that's basically what black's playing for. After f3, this tactic, bishop to h2, king h1, and then knight g3 with the discovery coming on the next move is pretty much forced. The other move, bishop to h2, king to f1, knight g3, king f2, and I think it's getting pretty close to a mate. F4 wins at least the bishop. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight takes. I mean, this is really getting ugly. Black's going to be at least 2 pieces up here. So yeah, so good tactic. F3 was an error for white. Without F3, black is still exerting a good amount of pressure on the king side. F4 is a really dangerous attack. I'm guessing that the best move here is knight takes e4, and at least that way, the white bishop, the white dark squared bishop has an escape square on d2. But yeah, this looks pretty good for black. Rook e8, and yeah, looks like a win. Okay. Knight takes c1, b5, f5, and yeah, this looks like a good line. Looks like a pretty good way of going about this. Let's go back further. I'm sort of interested in seeing if white had any improvements here. I think black played a great game, and most of this game actually I think was on capitalizing on this bishop, getting misplaced on c4. This should be a good demonstration. Definitely in the open Sicilian, bishop to c4 is not generally a good move. E6, d5, and it has to go somewhere, and moving it to c4 in the first place was not a good idea. So yeah, black's development is much better here, and showing equality, but I feel like black really has the initiative. C4, good move, I like it. This is good, and it keeps that a2 bishop constricted. Good idea. I thought this freeing move, bishop to b1, was actually one that makes sense for white. Anything to make this bishop worth more. I mean, it's almost like he reclaims a piece when he plays bishop b1 and forces you to trade pieces. Otherwise, this bishop was going to be completely stuck for the rest of the game. So it sort of is a recovery move for white. But overall, yeah, I mean, this game I think is mostly, basically this black has the advantage all throughout this game. Solidly played. I don't know if there's that much to improve here. let's look and go back. Yeah, I mean, white basically proactively makes this bishop move, and then you know, gives you equality almost immediately. And I don't know. I mean, there's probably some slight inefficiencies. Let's see. Yeah, no, nice game. No, well played, Banana Reno. I think you really got a good game where you were pretty much winning the whole time and held it effectively, which is always a good sign. Um, I sort of wonder maybe it's funny. Knight f6 was best. Yeah, I guess knight f6 is the best because it defends this d5 pawn. I'm wondering if there's like anything you can do with this knight on the a file to b3 and like constrict white's development. But on the other hand, if you get it to b3, it does restrict white's development, but it also sort of limits white. It also and it limits white's mobility, but it also sort of misplaces the knight on a square where it doesn't really make that much sense. Bishop takes, rook takes, knight e2. Yeah, overall, you know, black's just better. Yeah, I bet you get a super high accuracy score on this one. Interesting. Let's see what the mistakes were. I guess bishop takes b1, I guess, is a mistake. I don't know. I mean, he's going to get your bishop no matter what. I guess they're proposing knight to e5 instead, or knight to e4. I mean, I don't see any way that you can keep that bishop on that diagonal. Bishop to e4. Ah, okay. I guess that's a little better. Yeah, that's a little better. I see why that's better. I mean, basically, you know, I think, you know, white made a kind of good decision. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm always convinced. I'm convinced after it's not an idea I would have thought of. Like here, you know, I basically say, okay, white's, you know, taken his bishop and traded it for one of your minor pieces, and that is a big advancement for white because the bishop was totally stuck on a2 and wasn't improving at all there. You know, there was no future for that that bishop at a2. So, you know, playing it to b1 and forcing it to be traded for one of your minor pieces is actually a lot of progress. So I'm saying bishop. So I view that trade as sort of completed, but it is slightly more efficient to do it with bishop to e4 because on bishop to e4, white is still going to be interested in trading that bishop off. But if you play it to e4, you can retake with your knight and have a posted knight there at the end of this trade. So like all things equal, bishop takes, rook takes, and then okay, you know, the knight's on f6, but everything's basically fine. The rook improved a little bit, but not much. You know, sort of equal. But with bishop to e4, if he really does want to force off this bishop, this is a better situation. Or actually, there's a tactical response. But okay, sure, pawn takes. This moves your pieces forward. This does put pressure on that knight. Knight to d2. Oh, and basically this knight is getting attacked. So you need to be sort of careful with that. And then after pawn takes c4, the knight's forced to go to like either h4 or h2, but not d2 because the bishop and queen need to be defending this knight on f4. But as a general principle, this basically moves your pieces forward more than you know, taking and then reactively taking. It's a little better, not a tremendous amount better, but it's not enough to swing this game. Black is still winning, but it is just a little bit more efficient, which I'm sure is why the computer plays it. Anyways, in terms of other mistakes, I'm gonna just draw from the computer because I'm honestly not seeing much. So that was mistake number one, which was that slight inefficiency there, and then mistake number two was knight to g3, and I think just this is a tactical thing, like, you know, setting up this tactic with bishop to h2, king h1, knight g3, king takes, and then knight e2. Yeah, this basically it's calling it a mistake because you didn't play the computer assisted winning tactic here. This is a win. This is an efficient win, ends the game, well, whatever. But those are really two relatively small mistakes. I mean, I think Black played a good game here. Yeah, well, I mean, you got the win anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But that was like the put away shot, almost immediately. Otherwise, really not many errors, to be honest. Those were the two errors as identified by the computer. One of them is an inefficiency that I can sort of explain by the principle that it's good to bring your pieces forward on a trade, which it is. But between that and just the tactical improvement at the ending, otherwise good game. Yes, it does. Good question. Yeah, it does hang this. It basically isolates this C pawn, but it allows you to exert a lot of pressure quickly. There isn't really a good place for that knight. That knight needs to move now, and it doesn't have a good place to go. This also doesn't pay attention to what if the bishop doesn't decide to immediately trade. But this, yes, this does damage Black's structure, but it is, legitimately dangerous for White. The knight has to go to h2, in which case Black could play g5, and White's knight on f4 can't really move because you play bishop takes h2 with check, winning the knight. So the answer is yes, it does damage the structure, but everything else, but basically on this damaged structure, you win a piece. Knight's White's options are either knight e5, in which case you can win this valuable center pawn, and that's certainly worth the more fractured structure. You can go to knight h4, in which case you play g5 and win a piece. Or you play knight to h2 and play g5 and win a piece. So between the engine doesn't see a great difference between those, but two of them win a piece. The one that doesn't win a piece for Black, knight to e5, bishop takes e4, pawn takes e4, knight takes e4. Yes, it's very difficult to see. I didn't see it. The computer saw it. I can explain why the computer saw it, but yeah, that's a really difficult thing to see during the game. Basically, recapturing here is not. I can explain why bishop takes b1 isn't particularly good. Basically bishop take. There are multiple moves here that are better than bishop takes b1. The best is bishop to e5. I mean, yes, basically. The answer to that is yes. I talked on the stream a little bit about like how tactics get the winning end of a tactic gets better or gets smaller and smaller as play increases. So like, if you're at a 1200 level, a winning tactic is something that wins a queen. At master level, a winning tactic is something that wins a pawn. But at grandmaster level, a winning tactic is something that like improves your rook or gives your rook more mobility, and you go through this long tactical maneuver just to improve your position. And it's not strategic because it's an execution focused improvement. But yes, it basically inaccuracies are all mistakes, and tactics become an improvement to tactics basically are a way of securing that improvement through good execution. Anyways, yeah, I mean GMs are really, really strong. There's not much to say about that. They're really, really good. But they devote their lives to chess, which is their choice, and an interesting one. But yeah, so anyways, bishop takes b1. I guess I'd mostly say that it's sort of a waste of a move. There are other things that Black sort of wants to do in this position, like play b5 and lock up the queen side. That works. And I say that that's acceptable because bishop takes h7, king takes h7. This is more or less fine for you. There's nothing like too crazy about this endgame. So bishop e4 is the best way and involves these like computer-assisted small efficiencies. Basically this computer-assisted tactical play. But there are other reasons to not play bishop takes b1 there. Basically just because on that recapture, you're no worse letting him take you as opposed to you making him take the bishop. You might as well just spend the move improving your position as opposed to securing this trade. It's not really a trade that's that good for you anyways, so you shouldn't be in much of a rush to play it. Just improve your position, let him take yours on king take h7, and that's slightly better. Slight improvement, and nothing too crazy. But yeah, anyways, between that and basically between that and just basically the put away shot as opposed to the tactical, less pronounced tactical win at the end. Those are the only two mistakes that the computer identifies for you in this game. Overall, I think you did a good job. You exploited the bishop on c4, got it trapped on a2, and played a solid game that moved you forward and won. So overall, yeah, good game. Good playing, Banana Reno. Thank you very much for sending it in, and thanks for participating. Some very interesting stuff there. So here we have this game between Richard and Andy, and let's take a look. I haven't seen this before, so I'm gonna have to play through it really quick to see what happened. But looks like a Sicilian game with an early e5. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Hyperion. Cool. All right, so Hyperion's playing black here, and let's take a look from your perspective, Hyperion. Yeah, so it's a Sicilian game with an early e5. That's cool. I don't know the Sicilian super well as black, but this structure is common and well examined. Bishop e6, bishop e7, h3, castles, and yeah, I think basically here, black's improvements are like rook to c8, but overall I think this position gets pretty good for black. It's proposing knight de2. I couldn't really tell you why, to be honest. Maybe it's proposing an f4 push on the next move or two, but black's in pretty good shape. I don't know how the engine really evaluates these types of positions. For some reason, it's got a relatively large differentiation between bishop e7 and bishop e6 here. To me, they look about the same, to be totally honest. I mean, bishop e6 sort of supports this d5 push. I think this d5 push is probably good for black. If in a case where black trades this d6 pawn for this e4 pawn, black is improving because he's basically secure. He's eliminating white's spatial advantage of e4 versus d6. But yeah, black's just developing straightforwardly, and yeah, I guess, yeah, probably. But it's how valuable is castling, 2 moves earlier? You're in pretty good shape as black regardless. But yeah, overall, I think white has pretty much black has pretty much eliminated white's initiative here. In terms of attacking plans, this is a little bit more locked up on the queen side than I'm used to seeing in the Sicilian. I think probably rook c8 threatening rook c2 is a plan to go forward. I don't think black can attack too well on the king side in these types of formations, but let's see what happens. Knight takes e5 is an idea. It's that discovery, which is cool. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight c4, and then yeah, okay, so let's look. f4 to try to block the dark squared bishop. Okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So here, so on f4, um, yeah, I mean, this trade for the dark squared bishop, I think, yeah, leaves you with the bishop pair. I don't know how dangerous that battery was, you know, um, yeah, I mean, I think this is a reasonable sacrifice. Like it's basically makes knight to e5 an error. Um, but on move 14, sorry. Yeah, let's look. Um, yeah. Okay, so I don't know how dangerous that battery is. Well, first, I like knight c4. I think knight c4 is a good idea. Um, uh, but you're trying to place your knight on f4. Oh, that's why you played knight to h5. Yeah, okay, no, gotcha. Interesting. Uh, yeah, I mean, gotcha. Right. Interesting idea, Hyperion. Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks for yeah, contributing and like sharing that. That gives me a much easier time to focus. Interesting. Yeah, I get it. Um, I think the way to do this, if you, so first, I'm not sure about this queen and bishop diagonal. Like how strong is this really? I think white basically is going to need to move his pawns to really start attacking you. At some point, yes, the queen on d2 and the bishop on e3 can pair up and be a dangerous attacking force, but I think it's a few moves off. I think without g4, g5, h4, those types of moves, I think it's not as strong as it looks in this particular case. I think when the pawn's on like g6 and then there's like a bishop on g7 and there's opportunities for the queen to get to h6, those are when that battery, that dark squared queen and bishop battery is the strongest. Against a king side with like unmoved pawns here, I don't think that white can really get in. Obviously, like you play knight h5 and he plays knight takes e5 and that plays out great for you. But here, I think you can just sort of ignore it for the time being. Like, how does this is one where like, okay, the pieces are definitely focused towards the king side. They're attacking you. I understand why that's threatening for sure. But I can't really come up with a super concrete way for this bishop and this queen to get into your like king side basically. I'm thinking maybe like knight to f4 or knight to h4, knight to f5, but it's pretty tricky for me to see how that actually happens. The battery is for sure threatening. I see exactly the same thing where your eye is sort of drawn to it as something that could potentially attack you if you're castle kingside. But I think you can just ignore it and wait for black to play something, or wait for white to support it with more force. I actually sort of like d5 here. I think d5 helps you sort of expand in the center, and then if you're worried about that battery, it helps you neutralize some of these pieces. I don't know. I feel like I feel like this is a better center for black, but I don't know. But I wouldn't overestimate this battery. It looks threatening, but I don't think there's an immediate way for black to really win. Yeah, no. I think yeah. So I think knight takes c5 and knight c4, and you really have a choice. I mean, I know the computer says knight takes e3 is the best, but you can also just keep the knight on c4 and play like bishop f6, and you've got a super good outposted knight and a super strong diagonal here. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think d5 is kind of the way that black advances this position. Like, I think white will probably try like g4, g5, but I think at the same time, black will play like d5, knight takes d5, and black will try to force the play towards the center while white tries to force it towards the king side. And I'm pretty sure black wins the race there. Like, black gets his objective achieved first, I think. Um, so yeah, so like knight c4, queen e1, and yeah, black's much better. Wins an exchange. Um, yeah, wins the game. Awesome. Great. Yeah, no, great win, Hyperion. This looks like yeah. So knight h5 is fine. Conditional, and you know that knight h5 is fine. I'm wondering if, but yeah, I think that's probably somewhat inefficient. I was thinking maybe h6, g5, but I don't really think you want to do this as black in this situation. I think what you want to do is you want to make the game about the center. Black has kind of a better structure to attack in the center. You can play queen c7 and rook d8 and really make some advances here. Whereas white doesn't have much of a basically white doesn't have much of an attack. But white will be trying to focus on the king side. Black will try to focus on the center, and black will make the game about the center. I think that's the best strategic plan here. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, knight c4. This plays out well for you, and you win. But there wasn't really that much of an opportunity for things to really change or to go wrong here. You basically play Sicilian, which is fine. It transposes into recognizable lines. And then, but I think, yeah, back to this point, because this is a strategic decision-making point in this game for black. I think queen c7, rook d8, d5, and make the game about the center here. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can take a look on move 22. But yeah, but I think queen c7, rook d8, d5, you're good as black. I think you want to not overestimate this queenside attack, because white will basically need to prove it, and it's sort of difficult to get white to successfully demonstrate that he's got an attack here. I think advancements in the center are where black should be focused. So I would do like queen c7, rook d8, d5, or something similar to that, and make the game about the center. Yeah, on move 22, you could capture the c2 pawn. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're way up here. Let's see. You could capture the c2 pawn, but it would expose your rook. I just want to make sure I see it. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's true. You're in pretty good shape here. You're up in exchange. White doesn't really have many points of attack. I think you have many options to just sort of grind this out. Rook takes c2, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I understand the general concept, which is, you're up in exchange, so why make things more complicated? Why make things more complicated when you're taking a pawn that you don't really have to right now? It's not that much better than the second best alternative, but at the same time, I don't think that this, this rook takes c2 is too weak for you. This is okay. These attacks are annoying, but you kind of bring your rook back to, you always have rook to c8 as an escape square if you want to slow things back down. But honestly, like, I think you're in pretty good shape. You can just sort of calmly apply pressure with like queen f6, queen e5. Your pieces are better and they're capable of controlling more squares, so Yeah, I understand it. I think you can just calmly apply more and more pressure. Maybe protect this queen from getting over here, but you're in good shape. This is a win for black, and so yeah. So objectively, I think we both see that rook takes c2 is the best, but um, you know, and it is the best. But you don't have to take it if you feel like the volatility of it makes your position less likely to win. You're up by enough material here. You can play pretty conservatively. Um, yeah, good win. But yeah, but I think in terms of strategic planning, this battery is probably overestimated, and strategically, black will play d5 at some point in the relatively near future, trade off pieces and secure at least equality or potentially something better than equality. But overall, pretty good game. Interesting. Um, yeah, I think it's a good game. I think you made very few. You made very few errors here. And the one error that I think you can really point to, white played knight takes e5, so it was fine. Um, and then I like this tactical bishop to f6 here. That was solid. But overall, good stuff. You're in good shape. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for sending it, Hyperion. Please keep sending them. They're super interesting. Yeah, we're super happy to go over them, and it's interesting. But up in exchange at the end game here, and you're pretty much won. Yeah, no, thanks, Hyperion. No, thank you very much for helping the stream work and sending material. Super interesting for me. I enjoy it. So thanks a lot for that. All right, last game of the night. This is Void Zero playing white. And we will look at it. Oops. I'm trying to keep everything on chess.com just to keep everything standardized. Yeah, there's a weird export from Lee Chess. Cool. Okay. All right. So e4, c5, knight c3, f4, d6, knight f3, bishop g4. Yeah, interesting. So basically, this is a closed Sicilian Grand Prix. Black plays an early g4 or bishop g4. Main line here is like g6 or e6. But black basically gets his bishop involved super early here. This actually might be a situation in which it starts becoming okay to play bishop to c4. I guess he meets it pretty easily with e6, as often happens in the Sicilian. But yeah, it becomes more tempting because like sacrifices of bishop takes f7 on bishop takes f7. King takes f7, knight to g5, become a lot more kind of appealing with this bishop on g4. Bishop instead plays to b5, which makes sense. I mean, basically this bishop to g4 sort of requires knight to d4 to work well. Otherwise, white, basically now, if this knight can't move, h3 and bishop takes f3, which is not really a trade that black wants to make, is forced. And then white can develop with queen takes f3. a6, bishop takes c6, castles, g6, d3, bishop g7, queen e1. And here, yeah, I think this is pretty much, this is pretty good for white. Bishop g4 generally is just sort of a misplay because white can shut it down too easily. Bishop trade for knight, queen takes bishop. That trade of the bishop for the knight plays out favorably for white. So making a pin like that when you're not happy with the end outcome of trading your bishop for that knight is generally kind of not, sometimes the value of the pin is the pin, but the trade on the trade, white basically improves. So bishop g4 is probably not the right to play g4 and trap the bishop. So yeah, this bishop takes c6, is makes sense in the context of you don't want the knight to play to d4. Black is now going to have the bishop pair for the rest of the game, but I think it's probably okay. White's pawn structure is safe and difficult to attack, black can't really play much in the center. On d5, white plays e5, and on e5, white probably plays f5. But overall, good situation for white. Knight f6, h3, rook takes, castles, e takes, queen e6, or queen g3. Let's see. Basically, white's showing a big plus eval here, based on this tactic winning the pawn, queen e6. King h8, queen takes f5, and white is has a very good position and a one pawn lead. But I'm sort of surprised that is. I'm sort of surprised that not playing that, makes it an equal game, because here, before anything happens, right? Like if the move is, queenside castles or something, or I guess what are the preferred lines, like queen d7. White is showing like almost a one pawn advantage. Here, after castles, pawn takes, queen e6, white has 1.9, but if white plays queen to g3, the position's immediately equal, which is surprising, because I would figure that white would maintain the advantage even without winning that pawn, because he was up more than one pawn in terms of eval. Weird. But yeah, so here, I guess, I don't know, e6 or rook b8. But generally, I sort of just think, white's in pretty good. I like white's position from a practical perspective. This black king side is relatively open. This bishop probably won't get in to be a supporting piece in the attack, but something like, I guess in terms of maneuverability, it's sort of tricky. It's hard to get all the pieces in. Maybe queen h4, knight e2, knight g3, knight f5, or something. But yeah, so the objectively best move, best opportunity was queen e6 here. Just in terms of tactical vision, that's something that it would be good to see. So I point towards tactical study on that one. But even here, I still think white has a better position in terms of practical comp, in terms of ability to win this game. This looks pretty good for white. Queen g5, e6, rook g3, rook g7. This looks kind of dangerous. Bishop e3, and that's an interesting move. I would think that's not right, but maybe that's okay, because you can't play queen takes, but so here on knight takes e3, you play like king h2, but you can't play knight takes g7. Interesting. Okay, cool. So yeah, so knight d5 makes sense. I would definitely play bishop f2, but that may not objectively be the best. I'd play bishop f2, and then plan to take this pawn on e6 the next move. This bishop on g7 is pinned. So here, knight takes e6 probably, queen takes, rook takes, and overall, black just has a really compromised king side. Black should probably play like c5 or something, although d takes c4. But white's going to play like bishop to d4, so if black can prevent that, that's a good thing. What's the best tactical play here? Rook e8. Rook e8 makes sense. Basically it forces the knight to move, and the knight's like a key part of this attack on g7, so it's a good tactical opportunity. But yeah, overall, a good attack gets generated here. Let's just look at this. I'm surprised that I'm surprised queen g3 isn't evaluated as better, because I still just feel like white has all the attack there. But yeah, I guess the Sicilian plays out pretty well for white. Bishop g4 is not really that great in the Grand Prix attack, because the white queen can just safely recapture. This is already at a pretty high plus eval on bishop takes c6. Unlike black, who has to deal with like an awkward pawn structure after bishop takes c6, if you play bishop takes e3, queen takes f3, this is going to be pretty good for white. Castles, g6, and black allows this tactical opportunity. The main improvement in this game is this queen e6 move. But yeah, now it really comes down to tactics. Knight takes e6 is very complicated. And unfortunately, yeah. So this basically this tactic this tactic doesn't really play out. Knight takes e6, ironically, is a winning move, but it requires king to h2 being played on the next move, which is a weird move that doesn't make too much sense in the context of an attack. Here, bishop e3, knight d5, knight takes, and black's just sort of, basically with knight g4 and a move that isn't king h2, black is better. I probably would have sidestepped this with bishop to f2. This basically is a little slower, and like queen d8, and your queens probably get traded off, and your attack kind of, it stops. But the value of knight takes e6 is that, the value of bishop f2 followed by knight takes e6 is that white secures a material advantage, and black doesn't really have any responding threats. So this line is better, I think. But a few different opportunities. The first, this queen e6 move, forking the king and the pawn, the isolated pawn, is a good tactical win for white. So I would definitely pay attention to a move like that. That's a tactic study type thing. You would find that with a sufficient amount of tactical study. So everybody do their tactics, and this this move is strong. Here, I think this got dangerous for white. This diagonal got threatening, but I think you can shut it down with bishop f2. Knight takes e6 was actually a great try, and the engine says that actually would work with king takes to h2. But knight takes e6 is an ambitious move to play if you don't see the full tactic there. Otherwise, you're sort of hanging your bishop on e3, and just the relatively simple bishop to f2, keeps everything here defended and safe. Here, there's not really much. That black can do to really gain a lot of material on white. But knight takes e6, even though it is technically tactically winning with king h2. If you don't see king h2, knight takes e6 is an overly aggressive move. If you don't have the follow-up immediately in place. But it's interesting. Super tactical game at the end. Black basically got a somewhat worse position by playing bishop takes f3, and the bishop g4 idea in that line is not really that great. And then white has a great position, and then there's just a big tactical mess. So at the end, I guess I would just say it really, chess comes down to tactics at every level, particularly at class level. So put your time in. Put your time on Puzzle Rush, Puzzle Battle. Make sure that you're really well studied there, and if you can, just keep improving, keep putting in the time there, and these games will get a lot less volatile. Until then, I think it's probably a good idea to play more conservative moves before aggressive tactics if you don't see a definitively winning follow-up. But it's really interesting. I mean, it was a very good game. White got a great position, and given how open this king side was, I really think that white had some good chances. So yeah, there was a king and pawn fork on move 15. I just wanted to go back because you wrote that note. Sorry, maybe I already went over that. The queen e6 king and pawn fork. Yeah, exactly. I saw that too. But here, from a fundamental perspective, knight takes e6, bishop to f2, I think that's those are the two takeaways I got. Those are the two takeaways I got, Void Zero. I think pretty much I would say what your analysis has already led you to. I'd also probably thematically think a little bit more about that bishop to g4 move and how that's sort of a misplacement in the Grand Prix attack. But I think your assessments are generally pretty good. I'm in agreement with those. At the end of the day, I think both of those can be solved with tactical study. Not much thematically there. Kind of interesting. Knight takes e6 was still winning. Knight takes e3, and then white has two wins, and they're king h2 and king h1. And after either of these, king h2, like for example, the queen's basically forced to go back, and d4 makes this knight vulnerable. But at least this way the attack can continue. This basically has a double. After d4, there's a double attack. Rook takes knight, and knight takes rook here, both for white. But overall, I think this is right. Thank you very much for sharing that, and thanks for sending the game. Overall, very interesting stuff. You already did an analysis going into this, and I'm pretty much in agreement with that analysis. You got a good position out of the bishop g4, misplacement, not the greatest idea in the Grand Prix attack. And the game came down to tactics. Pretty simple stuff at the end of the day. But good findings by you. I'm in agreement. I think they're the right assessment. Thank you very much for sending in the game, everyone. Void Zero, thank you very much. Please keep sending them. I'm super happy to do this analysis. Really hope it's helpful, and really like having you guys here. So thank you very much for joining the stream. I will see you hopefully tomorrow. Next stream is at 10 a.m. Eastern, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.